Welcome back to JonBownePolitix. It's officially the beginning of 2020, January 1st. An upcoming decade that follows a great awakening from a previous decade. Where are we headed and where have we been? Well, we just dug ourselves out of 7 years of Barack Hussein Obama. The 2010s will go down in American history as a decade when the Bill of Rights was picked off one by corrupt globalist minions infesting the reins of power in all three branches of government, fueled by a shockwave of propaganda that took the American people completely by surprise.
Trump is goading us to impeach him. That's what he's doing. Every single day, he's just like taunting, because he knows that it would be very divisive in the country, but he doesn't really care. Just wants to solidify his base.
House Speaker Nancy Pelosi today saying that President Trump obstructs justice every day by stonewalling House Democrats, and in doing so is trying to push Democrats towards impeachment. Angela, do you agree?
I agree that he is trying to get impeached.
A recent misrepresented article from the know-it-all liberal mouthpieces over at Mashable, cleverly titled 2010s equals 1984, the decade we finally understood Orwell, would have you believe that we are all blind, naive fools to be threatened by the growing surveillance monstrosity and that Donald Trump is Big Brother, not the carefully constructed, all-data-consuming intelligence apparatus. Isn't it interesting how socialism, camouflaged as liberalism, projects its own evil deeds upon the rest of us? Because, as Chris Taylor for Mashable writes, if anyone is protected by party members who will endure any humiliation to trumpet loyalty to the great leader, one need look no further than the Democrats' recent impeachment debacle, where none of their seats are safe now, and they are widely disliked by Democrats and Republicans alike. The 2010s were lorded over until 2017 by CIA stooge President Barack Obama, who wielded a flamethrower to freedom of speech, the free exercise of religion, gun rights, due process, and our overall culture.
We're supposed to stand up to discrimination. And we're sure as heck supposed to stand up clearly and unequivocally to Nazi sympathizers.
Ensuring that future presidents would have the power to silence dissent through any means necessary. Early on, Obama criticized the Supreme Court for its ruling in the First Amendment restoring Citizens United case, while his Deputy Solicitor General stated in oral arguments that the government could even ban the publication of certain books too close to an election. And now Biden has teased the possibility of nominating Obama to the Supreme Court.
I talked to Barack and
When was the last time you talked to him?
I guess now it's about 3-4 weeks ago.
Okay. Would you appoint him to the Supreme Court?
Hell. Yes.
It was Obama, not Trump, that went after leakers at 129 times the rate of his predecessors, and then surrounded the next president with them. Or that Obama signed off on the executive order which made it easier for the nation's intelligence agencies to share unfiltered information about innocent people. Or Obama's signing of the NDAA through doublethink methods over the holidays, where U.S. citizens could now be targeted, detained, and killed with no due process. The 2010s embodied the shadow government's Orwellian nightmare war on the U.S. Constitution. Will the 2020s begin with the big payback to restore the founding principles of our republic? Or are those freedoms permanently slipping away? Well, it is as if those freedoms are permanently slipping away as we careen into a culture of madness that the Democrats are spearheading. And it's sad to see all of these celebrities, all of these supposed leaders of our culture parroting all of these lies, misrepresentations of where we are headed as a country and where we've been. Here's Linda Ronstadt, who I've respected all of my life as a musician, completely destroying any respect I have for her or her credibility by comparing Donald J. Trump to Adolf Hitler.
I've read that you have read a lot about the Weimar Republic in Germany, and you sort of see parallels between then and now.
Well, great parallels. I mean, the intelligentsia of Berlin and the literati and all the artists were just busy doing their thing. And there were a lot of chances, as Hitler rose to power, there were a lot of chances to stop him, and they didn't speak out. And the industrial complex thought that they could control him once they got him in office, and of course he was not controllable. And by the time he got established, he put his own people in place and, stacked the courts and did what he had to do to consolidate his power. And we got Hitler, and he destroyed Germany. He destroyed centuries of intellectual history, forward and backward. The people like Beethoven and Goethe and Thomas Mann became jokes. They became Nazi laughingstock.
I think a lot of people, though, would be surprised to hear comparisons between what happened then and now.
If you read the history, you won't be surprised. It's exactly the same. You find a common enemy for everybody to hate. When I was sure that Trump was going to get elected the day he announced, and I said it's going to be like Hitler, and the Mexicans are the new Jews. And sure enough, that's what he delivered.
I think it's a sad state of affairs to pick on Linda Ronstadt. She's suffering from progressive supranuclear palsy, PSP, which is a degenerative disease that includes loss of balance, slowing of movement, difficulty moving the eyes, and dementia. Basically, the deterioration and death of specific volumes of the brain. So I know she has a good heart, and she's a good person. What's even worse is that Anderson Cooper would use her to push CNN's propaganda. In the beginning of Ronstadt's statement, she says that the creative forces within Berlin had a chance to stop Hitler from his rise, and they didn't. And then the industrial complex, once he reached power, had a chance to stop him, and they didn't. And then Hitler filled his cabinet with his own people. And she compares that to Donald Trump. Well, in America, the creative forces, the literati, as it were, in America has done nothing but attack Donald Trump since the beginning. The chance to stop him has been going on since before he even became elected. Of course, those who support Donald Trump have their careers destroyed, their shows taken off the air like Roseanne. Conservative news blogs, websites are taken down. People who support Trump are taken off of YouTube, etc., etc. So, no comparison. Sorry. And now to refresh your memory, this is what she said at the end during her interview with CIA stooge Anderson Cooper.
I think a lot of people, though, would be surprised to hear comparisons between what happened then and now.
If you read the history, you won't be surprised. It's exactly the same. You find a common enemy for everybody to hate. When I was sure that Trump was going to get elected the day he announced, and I said it's going to be like Hitler, and the Mexicans are the new Jews. And sure enough, that's what he delivered.
Yeah, well, this statement is even more bizarre because I was actually down in McAllen, Texas, when the Obama administration was building those cages that they keep talking about putting those children in. Of course, nobody said anything until Trump became president. It's the use of Linda Ronstadt as a celebrity to spew propaganda to the masses that's actually the most disgusting part about this. And even though she is suffering from PSP, it's no different than what's being spewed from the left. Here's Michael Moore talking to Rolling Stone just the other day about white people and why you need to be afraid of them.
2/3 of all white guys voted for Trump. That means anytime you see 3 white guys walking at you down the street toward you, 2 of them voted for Trump. You need to move over to the other sidewalk because these are not good people that are walking towards you. You should be afraid of them.
That is absolute madness. Why should you be afraid of a Trump voter? Because they want to protect the Bill of Rights? Because they don't want the same results of replacement migration that's going on in Europe and destroying the sovereignty of those nations? Because they want economic freedom? Because they want unemployment numbers lower than they've ever been? No, what it all adds up to is that the Democrats want us to look at this hand while the other hand is doing something else. Like California, where homelessness is a mess. Nancy Pelosi was recently confronted by a Californian at a 49ers game. This is how that went down.
Can I get a photo with you? We're both Niners fans, right? I just wanted to tell you I don't like what you're doing to California.
I love how she just sits down and acts nonchalant like nothing actually happened. She's going back to her little world, her little bubble, where she is the ruler of all that she sees. Here's Ben Carson, the HUD secretary, Trump's HUD secretary, explaining just how bad things are in California when it comes to homelessness.
But let's talk about resources here. You talk about state and local governments and resources being applied. Governor Newsom in California has applied over $1 billion to this issue. Money doesn't solve the problem. So how do we reconcile money and resources?
Look at Texas and how much their homelessness has gone down over the last year and over the last 5 to 7 years. Significant decreases because the policies don't encourage people to sleep on the streets. They encourage people to go to the places where they can get the kind of help that will get them into the right situation. And then you have to look at the way people treat people who are mentally ill. Some people say it's compassionate just to let them do anything they want to do. That's not compassionate at all. What's compassionate is helping people who cannot take care of themselves manage. And if we can get them into the right setting so that they're getting proper medications and counseling, many of them become quite functional at that point. Places that are just applying housing first are the ones who've resulted over the last 5 years in a decrement in transitional housing beds of 77,778. At the same time, the unsheltered homeless number has gone up by 35,000. Do the math. We have the right policies. We may have the number of beds that we need to take care of them, but when you exclude that number of transitional beds, you create a much bigger problem. And, this is not necessarily just a Democrat problem. There are Republicans also who have been, let's just say, taken in by the housing first strategy and not really analyzed the complete program and what the outcome is. And you have to really be able to look at all of those facts, look at the data, and then make your decisions based on that, not on ideology. That is the key to fixing this problem.
Sounds reasonable, right? Sounds factual, sounds logical. Yeah, well, when you base your policies on ideologies, you end up with an Austin, Texas situation versus a San Antonio, Texas situation. Ben Carson was talking about the success of Texas and the homelessness rate dropping. That short-term solution that Ben Carson spoke about in San Antonio is leading the nation as the city's largest shelter receives national recognition for its comprehensive on-site services, including short-term housing, addiction and mental health treatment, job placement, and physical health rehabilitation. According to the Rivard Report, a nonprofit journalism for a better San Antonio. Whereas the leadership in Austin, Texas resembles that of the left, and housing first policies are taking shape as rundown motels are bought up with taxpayer dollars for millions of dollars, and the homeless continue to sleep in front of businesses, and a thriving artistic community that intends on drawing millions of people to Austin city streets every year that are on par with what's happening in San Francisco. This horrible leadership, on top of the corruption that has become the modus operandi of the left. And again, I'm neither right nor left. I'm just a referee calling it like it is. And as 2020 begins and as 2010 comes to a close, have we as a nation finally become sick and tired, and will we address this corruption for what it is? There are pending investigations that the Democrats do not want to see the results of.
It was revealed he's looking at former CIA Director John Brennan. 11 congressional Democrats suddenly called on Durham to resign. Correspondent Mark Meredith tracking the latest developments for us. Good evening, Mark.
And good evening to you, Mike. Now, for months, we've heard calls for Attorney General Bill Barr to step down. Now, a handful of House Democrats want U.S. Attorney John Durham to step aside. Neither men are expected to give in as the criminal investigation into the origins of the Trump-Russia investigation rolls on.
Georgia Congressman Hank Johnson sent Attorney General Bill Barr a 3-page letter before Christmas, writing Barr and Durham have been, quote, acting as mouthpieces for Donald Trump rather than public servants bound to the rule of law. Johnson and 10 fellow Democrats say that's why they want Durham to quit the investigation into how the Russia probe started. Attorney General Bill Barr recently told Fox News Durham's work is expected to last several more months.
He's not just looking at the FBI, he's looking at other agencies.
That appears to include the CIA. The New York Times reports Durham is looking into former director John Brennan's conduct. The Times says Durham has requested emails, call logs, and documents from the CIA, a move Politico said today could put the spy agency's current chief, Director Gina Haspel, in a, quote, bind.
He is looking at all the conduct, both before and after the election.
I was distraught right after the election, but I'm now actually invigorated by the challenge and our ability to succeed in this challenge. You take on the intelligence community, they have 6 ways from Sunday at getting back at you.
The fools on the Hill actually introduced articles of impeachment. Ultimately, not to impeach a president they hate based on lies, but to impeach the votes of the silent majority of so-called deplorable Americans that voted him in.
Today, in service to our duty to the Constitution and to our country, the House Committee on the Judiciary is introducing 2 articles of impeachment charging the President of the United States, Donald J. Trump, with committing high crimes and misdemeanors. The first article is for abuse of power.
If you impeach a president, if you make a high crime and misdemeanor out of going to the courts, it is an abuse of power. It's your abuse of power.
The idea that they're going to change the course of history, that staff is going to interview staff, and then they're going to come out with articles of impeachment. What power do members of Congress who run to represent their districts have that they take it away? The idea that Democrats could control who can ask questions inside a hearing, or how the structure would go. That's an embarrassment.
But now those same Democrats face a real investigation laser-focused on their coup, as the hope of a nation hangs on the findings of Attorney General Barr and his bulldog investigator John Durham, fueled by Providence.
I think the heart of the IG's report really focused on how the investigation was conducted once it got going, and that is especially the very serious abuses of FISA that occurred, much of which has been, in my view, not accurately reported by the press over the last day. As far as I'm aware, this is the first time in history that this has been done to a presidential campaign, the use of these counterintelligence techniques against a presidential campaign.
The long-awaited Inspector General report detailing Bill Priestap's opening of the investigation of the Trump campaign, known as Crossfire Hurricane, was largely deemed a dud. But there are plenty of takeaways that suggest that IG Horowitz's report was merely an appetizer and cast a very small net, mainly due to the restrictions of the IG office.
Based on the evidence collected to date, and while our investigation is ongoing, last month we advised the Inspector General that we do not agree with some of the report's conclusion as to predication and how the FBI case was opened.
Horowitz had no access to people at the CIA, Joseph Mifsud, any of those people, to reach the conclusion he did about the basis for the investigation without knowing about Mifsud and all those people, which Durham does. Durham felt he had to slap Horowitz right across the face publicly. That's quite embarrassing for Horowitz. That is a rebuke like I have never seen of an inspector general by a United States attorney.
However, the IG report did illuminate on the fact that we still don't know who paid for and directed the spy ring that proceeded and continued throughout the FBI's Crossfire Hurricane investigation. Exculpatory evidence was also withheld as the Democrats sought the initial FISA warrant, while emails were doctored to prove their fraudulent case to investigate the Trump campaign. The IG report also reveals that the key subsource for the Steele dossier was misquoted and he or she's words were exaggerated. All of these actions reveal bias and abuse of power on its face. Inspector General Horowitz doesn't have the power to investigate the origins and bad actors within the still hidden spy ring. But Attorney General Barr and John Durham can turn over every rock in their purview.
I think when you step back here and say, what was this all based on? It's not sufficient. Remember, there was and never has been any evidence of collusion, and yet this campaign and the president's administration has been dominated by this investigation into what turns out to be completely baseless.
Add to that the discovery that will explode from the upcoming Carter-Page lawsuit, as the Democrats' day of impeachment meets the full wrath of a nation that has had enough. All eyes were on impeachment as the Democrats ripped the country apart just in time for the holiday season.
Because no one is above the law, and he shall be held accountable.
Let's give him a fair trial and hang him.
Meanwhile, the second testimony of Justice Department Inspector General Michael Horowitz was largely overlooked.
I would certainly encourage people to read the 19-page executive summary.
Testifying in front of the Senate's Homeland Security Committee, Horowitz clarified that he hadn't reached the conclusion that the FBI's sloppy investigation of the 2016 Trump campaign, known as Crossfire Hurricane, wasn't born of political bias. Instead, Horowitz doubled down on all of the disturbing findings concerning the FBI's team and its managers.
We're concerned that under applicable FBI and Department policy, it would have been sufficient for a first-line FBI supervisor to authorize the sensitive domestic CHS operations undertaken in Crossfire Hurricane, and that there is no department or FBI policy requiring the FBI to notify department officials of a decision to task CHSs to record conversations with members of a political presidential campaign. We concluded that current department and FBI policies are not sufficient to ensure appropriate oversight and accountability of such operations. As we describe in our report, the FISA statute and department and FBI policies and procedures have established important safeguards to protect the FISA application process from irregularities and abuse. Among the most important are the requirements that every FISA application contain a full and accurate presentation of the facts, and that all factual statements are, quote, scrupulously accurate, close quote. We found that investigators failed to meet their basic obligation that the FISA applications be scrupulously accurate. We identified significant inaccuracies and omissions in each of the 4 applications, 7 in the first FISA application, and a total of 17 by the final renewal application. As a result of these significant inaccuracies and omissions, the FISA applications made it appear as though the evidence supporting probable cause was stronger than it actually was.
In both of these investigations, you found political bias.
We found, through the text messages, evidence of people's political bias, correct.
Why would all of these people 4 times over the space of half a year deliberately mislead a federal court?
But that was precisely the concern we had, is what you lay out. There are so many errors, we couldn't reach a conclusion or to make a determination on what motivated those failures, other than we did not credit what we lay out here with the explanations we got.
Your conclusion that there was that political bias did not affect any part of the Page investigation, any part of Crossfire Hurricane? Is that what you concluded?
Not. We have been very careful in connection with the FISAs for the reasons you mentioned to not reach that conclusion, in part, as we've talked about earlier, the alteration of the email, the text messages associated with the individual who did that.
All of this flies in the face of what the media originally reported.
Here it is, 430 pages from the Inspector General of the Justice Department. Has been working on this for almost 2 years now. And what it says is that the Inspector General found no political bias in the FBI.
The Justice Department's internal watchdog released a highly anticipated report about surveillance into the Trump campaign in 2016. It found no evidence of political bias, but it did find some serious flaws.
Meanwhile, Hillary Clinton lackey, former FBI Director James Comey, has used up every excuse he had at his disposal.
17 significant errors in the FISA process.
He's right. There was real sloppiness. 17 things that either should have been in the applications or at least discussed and characterized differently. It was not acceptable. And so he's right. I was wrong.
Well, it was kind of a non-apology apology. He essentially said, well, we were sloppy. No, you weren't sloppy. The Inspector General found the FBI falsified evidence in the FISA process. Falsifying evidence. How do you accidentally falsify evidence?
In fact, after meeting with Barack Obama in early January of 2017, he took that dossier and went to President Trump, or then President-elect Trump, and confronted with him with it. And he used that meeting as part of the investigation of Crossfire Hurricane. He ran downstairs and ran over to the secure video conference to talk to his Crossfire Hurricane team about what he discovered. He was spying on Trump directly, and to say this was all happening 7 layers below him was a big lie.
As the origins of a still mysterious spy ring and its funding could potentially be cracked open by the upcoming Barr-Durham investigation.
Given the repeated errors, some would say abuses of the FISA process, does Attorney General Barr have a point?
No. He does not have a factual basis as the Attorney General of the United States to be speculating that agents acted in bad faith. The facts just aren't there. Full stop. That doesn't make it any less consequential, any less important, but that's an irresponsible statement.
So he says that was an irresponsible statement. What do you say?
He's lost his mind. How many of these close calls went in favor of President Trump? I mean, when they changed the email, was it to help Trump or hurt him? When they put the dossier material in, was it to help Trump or hurt him? When they put the DNC-funded Fusion GPS research material, was that to help Trump or to hurt him? Everything that happened was done to hurt Donald Trump.
Have we reached a point where we're tired of all of the lunacy attacking Donald Trump? I mean, sure, the guy was a reality TV star and he became president. The Trump derangement syndrome is in full swing, and 4 more years of this is going to be insanity. Here is what you can expect to see on your television set, masquerading as news. Chuck Todd doesn't even realize that he's insulted billions of people across the world by drawing a parallel similar to Linda Ronstadt's parallel, deeming the Bible, Trump, and Trump's voters as a pile of lies.
I want to read you guys a letter to the editor that we found in the Lexington Herald-Leader. It was a fascinating attempt at trying to explain why some people support President Trump. Here's what he says. Why do good people support Trump? It's because people have been trained from childhood to believe in fairy tales. This set their minds up to accept things that make them feel good. The more fairy tales and lies he tells, the better they feel. Show me a person who believes in Noah's Ark, and I will show you a Trump voter. Look, this gets at something, Dean, that my executive producer likes to say is, hey, voters want to be lied to sometimes. They don't always love being told hard truths.
No, unfortunately for Chuck Todd, the only hard truths that truly exist is the fact that he and his ilk are nothing but propagandists incestuously tied to the Obama administration, an era that has come and gone as we spiral into the future of hard truth. Well, that's going to do it for JonBownePolitix, this podcast of January 1st, 2020. If you're interested in doing a podcast of your own, you can always go to podcastcadet.com, put in Bound20, and you get 20% off your cart. You can even hire me as a consultant if you think this podcast was worth your while and you'd like to learn a thing or two. I'll see you next Wednesday and every Wednesday from here on out as we head into the chaos of 2020. You can always find us at dailynewscollective.com, at blablahshow.com, on YouTube at JonBownePolitix, on gab.ai at JonBownePolitix, and Twitter at NewsBound.